money is life energy and, what we project onto money.
I grew up in a family where my father's family were just somehow very skillful with money. I used to call it cash register consciousness. I always had a ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching going in my mind when I shopped, and now I don't do that. I mean, a lot of maturation is really all about boundaries, and if you think you don't have any, then you keep yourself in a sort of stasis.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi.
I'm so excited to see you again. The last time we met was in Ecuador.
Right, exactly. And before that, on a bus in London.
On a bus in London. And you gave a money workshop to some people in my office in the city. And it was fantastic. One of the people that attended actually fired and was featured in the Sunday Times.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
Holy moly.
Sunday Times, yeah. And he fired frugally, and you would be so proud. He spends all his time volunteering and doing good things.
A plus.
Yeah. So to introduce you to people on my Conscious Money channel, my channel is about inspiring around freedom and clarity with money. And everybody knows who you are. You are the author of Your Money or Your Life, and blessing the hand that feeds.
Blessing the hands that feed us.
Blessing the hands that feed us, yeah. And Your Money or Your Life, of course, is an absolute bestseller and quoted by everyone. And also, what I love about you is that you have the social activist side, and you care about issues to do with sustainability, and you have a great podcast called What Could Possibly Go Right? And I really recommend people go and listen to it because you would learn so much. What would you like to share before we start?
It's a rainy day in the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. We're going to have this until March. So, yeah, you get used to the inky sky. It's fine. I love it.
Yeah. And it's nice living on the island. You have community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary community here. And I mean, I'm not being community proud, like, haha, I have the best one. But it really is, it is such a committed and creative community. At least, the circles that I run in, so it's really wonderful.
And in the latest update of your book, you added community as a form of wealth.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was, there were things that we didn't say in Your Money or Your Life. We tried to keep it as lifestyle neutral as possible. But what made our frugality possible is we lived communally and shared expenses. And that was part of the frugality, is each one of us, we didn't each one have our own separate apartment or house. We shared a house, and so we shared all those expenses. So that's, I always would say to Joe, like, wait a second, that piece is really important. If we're not telling people that piece, we're convincing them that we can live hyper frugally and setting a standard that is unachievable for most people. So yeah, community is like super important. So when I got to do this update, I put it in.
That's fantastic. And there are two things popping up in my mind. One, that people are really annoying to live with in community.
Oh, yes.
Can be, yeah. And then
I live alone now, by the way. Yeah. I live alone.
You live alone. But you have close relationships that can come and go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I also have a house that on the ground floor, I've put in 2 apartments. Yeah. And so I have people living in the house, but they don't share my kitchen, and they're not in my space when I don't want them to.
Yeah. Which sounds like a win-win. Was it hard negotiating money? Because adding money into conflicts is sort of another layer of complexity. When you live frugally and you live with community, was it easy? Because I think...
yeah, this gets sort of into, it's a funny area. we were quite rigid as far as I'm concerned. And we also demanded of ourselves that rather than reacting to one another, we would go inside and examine what was it inside of us that triggered us. Wow. So in other words, it created, and we were very frugal, and we were like 100% were serving the world, which is beautiful. I love that I spent so many years of my life in that intention. I still have that intention, but it's, I'm a human being with a body. And so in terms of conflict living together, we rendered conflict inner conflict. So we didn't acknowledge that there was a lot of conflict. We didn't acknowledge the conflict that was there. And there's many spiritual communities in which that's the truth, whether you're a nun or whether you're a Buddhist monk in a Thai temple or any organization too, in so many groups that have a shared intention. The intention overrides the conflict. So, but it also misses a certain part of human development because you know yourself as you know yourself when your boundaries are pinged, and you have to okay, well, this is where I am and that's where you are, and here's the boundary. I mean, a lot of maturation is really all about boundaries, and if you think you don't have any, then you keep yourself in a sort of stasis. Very, very good person. I mean, it could be the 1950s household where father knows best. It doesn't matter. If you have a system where conflict is purpose is top and conflict is a disturbance to the purpose, then you miss, I think, a certain amount of spiritual growth. That said, I because of some events that happened, I decided to move out of that community, and I've been living by myself ever since. And I'm privileged to have a house that's paid off because I'm FI. And from time to time, I invite young artists to live in my guest room because it's fun for me. Yeah. And I also have, strong back to do things that I don't like doing anymore. I can't. So, I've become willful and queen-like and uncooperative, and it's okay. I'm old and I get to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting to hear that you attended to inner conflict, but also that there was a fair amount of conflict bypassing.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I think that's just also part of human nature as we avoid unpleasant stuff. And maybe that's also why our relationship with money can be complex. I speak to so many women that don't feel confident about investing and just avoid it. And also, I think financial planners in general, we have clients because people procrastinate financial decisions. I find it really interesting what you say about money, that money is life energy and, what we project onto money. Recently, I discovered I call my business conscious money, and that I needed to free myself to be more unconscious about money, And it's just balancing all these projections and qualities. Wondering what you'd like to say about that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this in other areas too. The Western mind is just ever since the Enlightenment, and I think therefore I am. The way we gain control is by definition, it's by compartmentalizing things. This is one thing, and this is another thing, and this is another thing, whether it's enclosure of the commons or, what is it called? The divine right of kings, whatever, we control through creating ownership. Mine, you can't have it, even if it was yours and I took it. Now it's mine. And so anything I think about, I recognize that it becomes a thing. It's a flow in my mind. It's a flow in experience. As soon as I talk about it, write about it, it becomes a thing. And so we treat ourselves as things to be controlled and manipulated. You know, bad you have eaten too much and now you're fat and the holidays are over and you've got to, you know, you are a thing. You're not like a being who's in process with a body that processes food. You know, you're not that. You're a thing to be moved around, controlled, dominated. And I can't guarantee you what's on the other side of that. I just know that that is a very limited worldview that most of us in the West think that it is the world. We think that's how the world operates.
What you've said is very profound, that the thoughts and concepts, we are very identified with thoughts and concepts and labels, when actually we're just pure being, we're sensing creatures, and all these external rules and standards make us...
But also in capitalism, you have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's doing a brand. You know, you have a social media presence.
Yeah.
Everybody is branding themselves. You know, that's what's befallen us in the liberation of being able to, everybody can publish, is that the struggle is to differentiate yourself by more and more minor, you know, definitions from one another so that you can make money in a capitalist system. I'm not making capitalism wrong. I'm just saying this is a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Is you got to have a perch and then you got to defend your perch.
Yep.
Or you get old and you could let go.
Then, yeah. I wanted to ask you about your conditioning with money. How has it changed, you know, because you grew up in the 50s and parents were quite frugal post-war.
I grew up in a family where my father's family were just somehow very skillful with money. It's not that they invested, it's just that they had this sort of thing about them. You know, they were doctors and lawyers, and so that makes a difference. But money was sort of like a background assumption, you know. And my mother's family was very stingy and frugal. My grandfather had lost his entire business in the Depression. And so they crashed, the business crashed, but their sense of status did not crash. So I was brought up by a mother who was trying to produce an appearance of status, married to a doctor into a family that was, you know, wealthy but not generous. So that all existed, you know. So she took me to bargain basement places to get my clothes, and she put me on a clothing allowance, you know. So I had $100 for the whole year, and I had a little accounting on the back of my door, and I would calculate which thing I could buy. So it was like expansive, entitled, and the fact that I lived in a upper middle class family. My father was a doctor, but frugal, and so I kind of like drank frugality with my mother's milk, you know, which I didn't drink. I was put on bottles right away because that's how they did it, and so I was already hyper frugal. Like I wanted to bust out of college. I didn't feel like if I fit there, it fit me. I wasn't, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so I engineered taking my junior year in Spain and going to the University of Madrid and then coming back for my senior year. So I lived for a year and a half in Europe on the exact amount of money that was dedicated to my junior year in college. And somehow or another, it was like I sort of like slipped through the barriers, you know. It's like I could have all that money as long as I was frugal. So I was like super frugal. I was on third class trains, protecting myself by sitting next to old women when all the soldiers were after me. You know, I figured out how to move around the world with very little money. So I was like that when I met Joe. Yeah. But he came from a different background. He came from poverty in Spanish Harlem. living on welfare with a mother who couldn't speak English and a father who was in a TB hospital. So he had a different brand of ferocity around frugality. And it wasn't a game for him. It was a game for me. Yeah, because I grew up, entitled. I mean, I graduated from Ivy League University. I always knew that I could somehow go into the system and make more money if I wanted to, but I preferred the freedom of the way I was living. And he didn't come from that. He came from but we shared the sense that you could move through the world with money, or you could move through the world with empowerment. Problems, and this is not as true for me anymore because I'm 78 and I can't, MacGyver my way through everything anymore. But, we took it all as a fabulous challenge. And so I learned so much by what we used to call not throwing money at things, and so, yeah, it's all a mixed bag, isn't it? Always.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, your book has had such a huge impact on people's relationship with money and their relationship with freedom and their finding fulfillment at work. And more recently, the great quitting. It's like people have so many more options now. 20 years ago, even when I started a job, I couldn't see myself doing anything else other than a job. It makes life easy in some ways and more, and different, I suppose. There are different kinds of challenges. We just don't have as much autonomy over our attention, it seems. Well, we do, but yeah. I suppose my question would be would there be anything you would write differently in the book that you think was missing? Although you updated it. Yeah.
I did that in 2018, the 2018 version that came out. I corrected for the things that I felt were, came out of a reality like 30, 40 years ago. I corrected that, especially, buy treasury bonds and live for the rest of your life on that.
Yeah.
But mostly I put in what can I call it? Financial interdependence. I put in the social responsibility, the social reality of money. I put in the permaculture reality of money. I put in, many forms of capital. I pulled apart a lot of that empowerment that we just did to live. Like the community, like we lived collectively. We never said anything about that because that sounded weird. But that's part of it. It's not that you have to live with other people, but you just realize that there's an economy, there's a social economy, and the which is, whether it's free, trading stuff on a free website. I don't know if you have Buy Nothing where you are, but we have a very active Buy Nothing Facebook communities all over. Whether it's that kind of trade or buying used or, clothing swaps or, all of this, it's like the capitalist mind is like, these are my clothes. I don't, this is mine. And when you just start to break down those walls and you just soften the boundaries. Yeah. There are things that are mine and you can't have them, but there's a lot of area where you recognize that sharing is actually more, produces more well-being than possession. So, yeah, I put all of that flow in there. And also the other part of it is that for Joe, it all led to financial independence. It all, there's, what do they call it? Skinny fire or whatever it is where, you just like save 70% of your income and you live, with somebody else in an 8x8 room in an apartment. You attach your bicycle to the ceiling. You just you save. It's almost like religiously, or and then you get out early. That's sort of the prize. But what we never said in the book, really, was our philosophical base that life is about love and service. And that the opportunity of liberating yourself from focus on money is so that you can work, you continue to work your butt off, but you're working for something that you believe in, whether it's your art or whether it's raising a family or whether, you have something that you love more than you love money, and you're liberating yourself from money to devote yourself to something that you love. And I feel like it just seems to me that there are people and it's our fault, I guess, there are people in the FIRE movement who don't really get that at all. I mean, I felt like an oddball. I thought I was, when I discovered the FIRE movement, I just felt all kind of squishy and hippie, because people are like, no, I'm going to backpack around the world. That is great. No problem backpacking around the world. But I hear it more now. There's this group called Socially Conscious FIRE where I feel like, yeah, okay, I'm among people that I understand who are really philosophically and materially there, discovering what's outside of the capitalist system and trying to enact it. I mean, some of my favorite people are on that site. So I don't know what your question was, but that was the answer.
That was the answer. And that was wonderful to hear about love and service. Really heartwarming.
That's all I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then screw up. I do love and service and screw up.
Yes. And I love that Facebook group too, Socially Conscious FIRE, because as you know, I work in finance and it can be, there's not a lot of people that talk about some of the issues that are dear to my heart, like sustainability, permaculture.
Right. Right. Except Laurel Daney. She's like, I just send everybody to her now.
Yeah. Yes, she's fantastic. All the food foraging she does. How was it to meet Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, and did his teachings influence your work on money? Because I know you talked about the Chilean economist Manfred Max Neef when we met.
Right. No, I don't think Marshall influenced me about money. He really busted the judgmental part of me that was parading around as conscious. Yeah. I didn't even know. I mean, that when I first did his workshop, I didn't realize that I was calling feelings thoughts. Yeah. I'm being disrespected. No, that's labeling. The effort with Marshall put us through to own our emotional life, which at first seemed like a punishment we couldn't project on people anymore, but eventually becomes like, it's the richness of like, I have a deep emotional life. My emotions are part of my intelligence. It's not even just part of my intelligence. It's like, it's just one of the most beautiful things. But I have to let other people have their emotions and judgments. I have to, and then that whole part of it about making requests. It's like, that really just stops manipulation right in its tracks, because, I might think I'm telling you my feelings, but what I'm really thinking is you should never do that again to me. I'm just informing you about it. But you can't, it was like such a, I think most of us really hate it when people are in their early Marshall Rosenberg talk and they're doing every sentence as a construction. But it was sort of like learning a new pattern. And so I learned that pattern. Yeah, I think he's, what he did was revolutionary. And the revolution is just beginning in terms of, what do you call it, nonviolent communication, or communicating from, not just even from the heart. It's very unique, but it had nothing to do with my relationship with money.
Yeah. I liked his teachings on money a lot, but yes, I also, like you, realized, oh my gosh, I'm just projecting my own reality onto other people, and it's got nothing to do with them. They're just being themselves, and I have an opinion, and I feel uncomfortable, so I'm releasing my discomfort by blaming. And
Yeah, exactly.
manipulating, and requests like when you're practicing NVC people can speak the perfect language, but again, they're just parading,
No.
jackal in wolf's clothing.
Yeah, I didn't, his teaching on money didn't really penetrate for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even have it in my conscious mind what his teaching was.
Yeah. Don't ever charge money, give money. I think he was talking about flow and to serve life, like a life-serving consciousness, so to keep that in mind.
Right.
Money, ask for money, but, don't pay, don't charge. And don't value people in terms of their worth and money.
Right, that part I get. And, also, I think I just don't charge because I have the freedom of FI.
Yeah.
So I'm not put through that anguish of trying to understand whether I should charge or not charge, or how to ask for money. I'm not put through that anguish because.
Yes.
But I'm starting a Substack. By the end of this week, it'll be up and running, called Coming of Aging, and about that process of like that self-discovery that I'm moving through time, and my body and the age of my body is affecting my identity and what I feel called to do. I mean, so it's just so interesting. And so the debate is, do I charge money? Mm-hmm. Where do I put the sliding scale? What's free and what's not free? I want everything to be free because I want people to come to everything I do. But it's also very honest that, I need money to, I can ding my own personal savings, to get help for all sorts of things that I need help for. But that's not quite honest, So I think there may be another, it's sort of like a privilege that I'm enacting that keeps me outside of the common sphere, for me to be able to ask, okay, I'm putting in, labor on this. I'm investing myself in it. Do I want to give people the opportunity to, put a price tag on that for themselves and honor me and my work and their appreciation of it and its contribute? All of those questions now are alive for me as I do this. And everybody else says, oh, of course you're monetizing. It's just how you monetize it. But now I'm thinking about whether and what does that mean to create that financial interface honestly. Anyway, so
that's interesting.
I'm a late bloomer.
Yes. No, it's humbling to hear you speak about grappling with the charging issue, because you're like the matriarch of your money.
Well, it's not charging. But that's what we just said in NBC, inviting people to contribute to me.
Yes.
And honor what I'm offering, and being honest about that I have a body that lives in time and space, and I can't just MacGyver everything. Money helps.
Yes.
It's important to me.
Yes.
Not like important to me like it's my identity, but it's the grease. It's what's going to keep me aging in place. It's going to keep me, would you like to keep me alive? Well, then sure. No, it's important to realize that.
Yeah.
And especially in this whole issue of aging, because, and FI, aging beyond your money, that's always the fear.
Yeah.
I'm going to live. People, I want to die with a dime in my pocket, but not a day later. That's what I used to say.
Yeah.
And it's because we live in a capitalist system. There's like nothing out there that says you're worthy, and of course we're going to, of course there's going to be a place for you to live. And of course, if you can't feed yourself, you're going to have food. Yeah. That would be ridiculous for you to have food. I mean, we starve our grandmother, I mean, that sort of quality. So it's a different question when you get older,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
And in America, you don't have National Health Service like we do here. So the cost of keeping your body is different.
It is different.
Yeah.
Which you remind me is I've got to pay up on my health insurance as soon as we get off. But yeah, it's a crapshoot. You know, what I'm doing is I'm protecting my nest egg by having health insurance. But, you know, I've had 2 hips replaced and 2 lenses replaced in my eye. And I've been able to survive that because I've had cancer. Mm-hmm. So because I have like a high deductible policy, I can always refill the coffers, but I'm so privileged in that. It's heartless here, and it's getting more heartless, honestly.
Yeah.
Not people. People are wonderful.
Yes.
But we can't.
The systems. Yeah.
Yeah, the system is in control of sociopaths.
Yeah. In Marshall's teaching about money, one of the things that really touched me was he said, I don't want to live in a world where a mother goes to a hospital and they don't treat her child because she doesn't have money. That's not the kind of world I want to live in.
Is that the world that I live in?
Consciousness. Yeah. That really helped me to see where he was coming from, you know, in terms of when we charge money, then she does she get turned away? But that's also what happens, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It forces you, it really forces you to think, like, okay, what does that mean? That I want to live in a world where people who are in need have what they need. And it's not a zero-sum game. So I need to work. Like, for example, right now, my local work is around increasing the amount of housing that people can afford in a community where the median age is over 60 and our housing has been bought up for Airbnbs. It's like, people, some houses are just, they're places for, gangsters to store money. I don't know what's happening, but a lot of houses sit empty. Rentals now are Airbnbs, so it's a screwy system. And how do you intervene in that system? And in a way, you have to intervene in the mindset. So what I'm really working on is the mindset of mutuality and reciprocity. That if we want, teachers and doctors and servers at restaurants and little shops and stuff like that, we're going to have to somehow make it that people who do that work that makes us a community, that they have a place to live. It's a consciousness. It's not just, do I want it or not want it? Of course, that's a piece of it, but there's a consciousness of sharing. And of course, I will make the case that if you put a little apartment in the ground floor at your house, then you're going to have income. Isn't that nice? But also, it's just really cutting through the privileges of capitalism. I made my money. I bought my house. If you want a house, go make your money. And if you need to rent, then there's something about you that hasn't quite succeeded enough, and I'm suspicious whether you're going to be able to pay your rent. It's really, so I'm working on a practical solution, which is that people partition off part of their house they don't use anyway and make it into roommate suites where the person has a separate entrance, a bathroom, and countertop appliances, and they can live a full life. But there's a consciousness underneath that.
Yeah.
I want to live in a world where nobody has to sleep in their car. If they want to sleep in their car, please do. There's a lot of people who enjoy going camping and living in tents, but that's a choice. I want to live in a world where y'all think that, well, that's not okay. It's really... So a lot of this is very boring work on regulatory things. And when you get down to it, when you get down from, higher consciousness to like justice in community, is a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I heard Desmond James, who wrote the book Evicted, talk about poverty and inequality in America. And he was saying that it serves people to keep, it serves some people to keep people poor. And
totally.
Yeah.
There's this phrase, oh, the poor will always be with us. Of course they will. There's always going to be a bottom 20%.
Yeah.
It's just the gap between the bottom and the top that varies, but the poor will always be with us. There's no way, except in a hyper-socialist system where we're all like, we all get a certain amount of, we go to the dispensary every week and we get our sheets.
Yeah.
Unless it's like an institution.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And people don't want to recognize it. There's always going to be people on the bottom, and the people on the bottom are convenient because they will take care of us as we age. And that's the truth too. That's the insanity of closing our borders when we have an aging population here that is not going to be able to take care of itself, and their kids don't want to do it because they're working 3 jobs.
Yeah.
So we are, and it's not saying, like, there are doctors and lawyers on our border waiting to get in. It's not like everybody wants to be. They're skilled people.
Yeah.
Who will find their way. But, it's just like, Cleona, this. It's like the consciousness is all wrong. And so getting something right through a system that is designed against justice, and that we're all soaked in it. It's a puzzle, but it's a worthwhile puzzle.
Yeah. The consciousness is fairly steeped in separation and not seeing it from the eyes of interdependence. And there's also a lot of gender imbalances among people in power, in governments and systems, legal systems, etc. And I think if that balances out, I don't know if that's a solution, but yeah, there's an imbalance.
Yeah, I just listened to a woman named Akaya Winwood who runs something called Third Act in the United States. It's employing people in the third part of their lives and doing, activist work. And one of the sentences she said is, as men get older, they can increase in status, and as women get older, they decrease in status. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the injustice is everywhere.
Yeah. Women become invisible as we age, but if a man has money, he becomes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Women tend to become invisible, but we may not.
Yes. Yes. This is true. I mean, sexually, or like, when you're out of place. Yeah.
I understand.
Are there any books that particularly influenced, that you love besides Your Money or Your Life, of course?
Ecotopia by Ernest Callenbach. Very old book, but Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk.
Uh-huh.
I mean, are you asking me for money books?
Money books, sorry. Yeah, money books.
Oh, sorry. There's a book by Jacob Needleman.
Yes, Money and the Meaning of Life.
Yeah, that one I really liked.
Are there books on climate and sustainability that you really like?
Not necessarily. I'm not a big reader, just to admit that.
You're a writer, but I just assumed that you read a lot.
I learn through doing.
Uh-huh.
I'm a social learner, and and when I get interested in something, that's when I dive into the literature. So, yeah, Paul Wachtel, The Poverty of Affluence, that was an important book for us. Those stump me. I'll think about it. I'll have answers in a week.
Okay. Are there any big financial mistakes that you regret making?
No, I mean, I think since I make some of my money as a landlord, I've made mistakes in who I rent to. And since I rent apartments in my own house, it makes my own house uncomfortable. So, yeah, and so I could choose to not earn income that way and not have that difficulty. But it's like everything. If you look at anything I do, it's all about relationship. Mm-hmm. It's a relational world. So making money in a way that provides housing, some good for another person, so that it's a mutuality and reciprocity, that feels good to me. But some people have been, not paid rent, done things to the house.
Yeah.
One young woman, I didn't know she had a problem with alcohol, and she just drank herself asleep and left the stove on, and the house almost burned down. So, it's like, so yeah, but I prefer that risk to the risk of investing in the market. And
yeah, it's a risk that
And I think the other thing is that I adopted a hyperfrugality, especially during the years when we were promoting Your Money, Your Life, and I wanted to be an exemplar, and I went overboard on it. Like, one of the jokes is that on the first tour for Your Money, Your Life, I'd be at a hotel room, like a fancy hotel, and I want, like a Coke. So I'd take the Coke, but then I would go later to the store in the corner and buy another Coke and restock even though it was on the publisher's dime.
Right.
So I was extreme, and it had a sort of quality of anorexia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I was gaining in control of my life by self-denial. Mm. And it was a sanctioned insanity, because that's what I was teaching. Mm. And it made me good, in certain people's eyes. Or, respectable, or like, how did she do it? Impressed. So I had to undo that. Mm-hmm. I had to work on undoing that. I used to call it cash register consciousness. I always had a ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching going in my mind when I shopped, and now I don't do that.
Yeah.
I shop sales. I'm a really good shopper. I only buy used. Yeah. But I don't have that going.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite something. I suppose the pressure of writing a book and telling people about it and then wanting to live that way is quite a lot.
I chose to do that, because for me, that book was my wedge in challenging consumerism. I chose to do that not in service to the book and selling books. Selling books was only about, can we change the consciousness around consumerism? Can we stop the process of eating the earth? Can we stop promoting lifestyles that are guaranteeing that the systems of this planet will start to crash right about now? I was dead serious about that. So it was all in service to that.
Yeah. And it is scary. Processed food. I heard a stat that said that in India, where I'm from, 1 in 4 people are obese now. Which, I don't know, when I lived there, everybody was skinny as hell. We were eating carbs. We were walking everywhere. I didn't even have tap water in my village. We took water out from the well. And life was active. And now we have fast food. We didn't have Coca-Cola when I was little. And then India globalized, and this consumer habits have changed. Convenience.
Right, and the plastic bags, like you go to the store and you get like a little thing of gum and you get a plastic bag to bring it home.
Yeah, although they're banned in Mumbai and some states in India, which is fantastic.
It's great.
Banned them overnight, I think 3 or 4 years ago. Just like
that's great.
Yeah. There are other eco-unfriendly habits, not to criticize, but, during festivals, the crackers and air pollution, and anyway.
We don't have to go on and on about that. Anyway, that's just...
Yeah.
So anything else before we wind up?
No, I think it's been lovely speaking to you and connecting with you again, and thank you so much for your time.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Likewise. I have such a great affection for you, and